Well, hello everyone. I am that Weems guy back after a 2 week hiatus. Uh, each of the last 2 weekends, I have been on the range both Saturday and Sunday, and then I had things in my work schedule. Let's say I worked several evenings this past week, and then was on the road the week before that. And it just made it impossible to get an episode recorded. And so rocking along, and here it is, Thursday, March the 9th at 8:08 p.m. And I was like, well, I got to get an episode in the books because I can't do 3 weeks without putting content out. And so I need to get something recorded. So I sent out today 8 invitations for a round robin episode tonight. And riding to our rescue, the Lone Ranger is Erik Lund. Erik is the only one out of the 8 people that I invited that could get here tonight. And I didn't want to reschedule because Erik, here's why. I don't have a college class this weekend. My class, my winter session class wrapped up today. And I don't have a class, like a range class this weekend. I'm like, I can have an actual full weekend off if I get an episode recorded tonight. So no, we're not rescheduling.
Awesome. And yes, I saw that, and your notice came through coincidentally when I happened to be at the range practicing. And yeah, so I may have massaged some of the Georgia Motor Vehicle Code to get home in time for this. But I made it, and I knew it was going to be interesting when I sent you the text 5 minutes before airtime, and I'm like, is the podcast still going? And you're like, hopefully.
Like, so you took the speed suggestions under advisement, is what you're saying.
Yes, I took notice of them. I can't say I obeyed all of them.
As a former state trooper, had you have stopped someone for speeding and like, look, trooper, I have to get home in time for a podcast tonight, would you have let them go the warning?
Probably not. Right. But if I had dropped the infamous Lee Weems podcast, I might have held some sway.
That might have gotten you more problems than you would have gotten help from.
So under the old cop stories, when it comes to that, you always get the, what's somebody ever said that got out of a ticket. So it was Sunday morning, and I was working up right by the exit, the toll road outside of Northern Virginia, which gets you out to Dulles Airport.
All right.
And it was 6:30, 6:45 Sunday morning, just getting the coffee, settling in the morning shift. Dude, this dude came screaming through, like 92 and a 55. So I pull him over and I walk up, and I'm just like, he hits me right away, like pulled right over, didn't have to run him down, everything. Window was down, license was ready. I rolled up, and before I could even say anything, he's like, look, I know I was speeding. Here's what's happening. Before I even asked, is there a reason? He's like, my mother-in-law is coming to stay with us for the next 2 weeks. And if I am late to pick her up from the airport, I will never hear the end of it. And I said, be careful. There's some more troopers on down the way. Have a nice day.
Sir, get behind me. I'll get you there in time.
Yes. I was just like, you know what? That kind of punishment does not fit this crime. So I took some judicial notice and used some discretion and kicked him along.
Yeah, I think the best one I've ever had was guy passed me, and I'm driving an unmarked car, and the guy like passed me on a double yellow, and I pulled him over and walked up and said, sir, is there a reason you passed the deputy sheriff on a double yellow? And he says, yep, I didn't know you were a deputy sheriff. That's an honest answer, sir, if not a good one.
Yeah. To all those young and upcoming next generation that are taking our spots, my little bit of wisdom for you is, when it comes to traffic stops, you can do one of three things. Obviously cutting them loose, but the two important things are, do one or the other, don't do both.
Right.
which is either give them an ass chewing and cut them loose, or say nothing and write them the summons. But
Yeah.
don't give them an ass chewing and write them the summons. That's when you'll get the complaint. So do one or the other. Don't do both.
Yep.
But yeah, so like we were talking earlier, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to throw out the warning that
Mhm.
that because this was supposed to be a round robin and you have no material prepped, and me reading that it was going to be a round robin, realizing that as long as I can duck out from not going first, I don't need any material prepped. And now it's just you and I. There's is going to be some serious nonsensical ramblings going on in this show. So just a warning, any of your viewers want to bail now, now's the time to pull the eject lever, because I have no idea where it's going to go and what we're going to talk about.
So it's going to be like every other conversation you and I have.
It's going to be like every time I'm on the stand. I have no idea what I'm talking about, Yar.
Oh man, my favorite thing I ever said on the stand was ongoing divorce case with custody disputes and keep winding back up in front of the judge who issued the custody order over contempt charges. And for the audience, if you enter into a civil agreement or divorce settlements and stuff, or a civil agreement, if one party doesn't abide by the civil agreement, then the other party's remedy is to bring them back in front of the judge and try to get them held in contempt. And in this case, I was in my third courthouse in the third county, because it would be wherever the issuing judge was in the circuit. And the whole thing started in a circuit in which I don't work. And so I'm in my third courthouse on this case. And the male half of this ongoing saga is representing himself. And so I'm on the stand, and finally he says, are you prejudiced against me? I said, sir, I was not at the beginning, but at this point it's safe to say that I am now. And the judge tried to curtail her laughter. And he wound up in jail for contempt after that hearing.
So I'll tell you my best judge story. So I had been working for about 3 months, and had a guy come through high speed, because back then, 90s, it was still only 55 miles an hour in Northern Virginia. Yeah. So we went to court, my court date. And at the time, he was now a substitute judge, Judge Hurst. Mm-hmm. But now, he had already done his time and was retired, and they would bring him back.
Yeah.
It's just one of those Southern character type judges you always hear stories about. Well, here's a story. So this guy came through at like 88. So he gets up there and pleads not guilty. So of course, all the pleas go first. Everyone does that. And at the end of the court, or the end of the day after lunch, is when they hear all the people that want to plead not guilty and go to trial. So he gets up there and I give my spiel, as in my uniform, displaying my badge of authority, running radar, all this stuff, come through high rate of speed, corroborate that with a high tone, identify, all the testimony. So the judge asks this guy, well, what's your side of the story? And so he starts talking about how he's got allergies, and that while he was driving, he had to sneeze, and he got into a sneezing fit, and the act of him sneezing convulsed his body and forced him to floor the accelerator at the moment he came through the beam, which is why he was going 80. Now, Judge Hurst was those type of judge, like when you were very talkative. So like when you were telling your story, he was adding comment the whole time. Mm-hmm. So he'd be like, oh, really? Absolutely. Yes. Done that many times myself, sir. And while this is going on. So he's like, oh yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. And, all this, and he, anything else you'd like to add? And the guy's like, no, that's what happens. And he thinks for a second, he goes, well, sir, I'm sorry to say that I do in fact find you guilty of speeding. And it's the judgment of this court that you be sentenced, that you be hung by the neck until you are dead. And he banged the gavel in the entire courtroom. It was like a needle across the record, and everybody stopped Nobody like was breathing. I mean, there's 100 people in this courtroom,
Yeah.
and everybody had the same look on their face, like, did he really just sentence that dude to hanging? I mean, and so and this guy's eyes went as big and as white as any cartoon character you could. It just, the whites of his pupils just shrank to nothing when he was processing that he was going to get hung. And of course, it felt like it was 30 seconds of silence when it was probably just like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then out of the blue, he breaks the silence and looks down at his clerk and he's like, I can't do that, can I? And she's like, no, Your Honor. And he goes, all right, $100. Back to gavel. Next. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is how it's going to be. And yeah, and that guy like had to be helped out of the courtroom by the deputy. Like he couldn't stand straight. He was just so shaken by escaping death by hanging for speeding.
The next person was up, Your Honor, could I change my plea to guilty?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I always remember that one. He was also the one that so he was in the Navy, and he was in the Navy in World War II. So on December 7th, comes in and he sits down and he goes, everyone in the, police all rise, judge comes in, he sits down and he goes, I want to take a poll. He goes, everyone in this courtroom that is that owns a Japanese vehicle, a Nissan, a Honda, anything like this, raise your hands. And so like 25% of the people in the courtroom raised their hands. He goes, all right, now leave your hands raised. And he said, everyone else, your cases are dismissed. And all he prosecuted was Japanese vehicles that day on December 7th because of Pearl Harbor.
That might be an equal protection claim, but I just don't know that the Supreme Court's worried about traffic
I
cases
don't know,
in
but I'll tell you what, none of the people that got their case dismissed complained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of the story on that ongoing saga was the original judge passed away. And so the judge that took his place inherited those cases. And basically the male half of that incident just basically said, I'm not going to take a menial job to make child support payments. If I can't do, he was a realtor, if I can't sell real estate and everything, then she just ain't going to get paid the child support. He's like $40,000 behind at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the judge orders him held in contempt until he can come up with some money, and has him locked up in the county jail that this whole thing originated in. Well, here's a lesson in it for you for being difficult to deal with, especially in that setting. He petitioned the judge for a weekend out of jail to take care of some personal business, and the judge granted it to him. So I'll give you, you can be released Friday at whatever time. You got to turn yourself back in Sunday at whatever time. And so the jailers processed his order to release him from the jail, while a deputy sat down the road and waited. Because see, in Georgia, if you don't pay your child support, they suspend your driver's license.
Oh my God.
And so the guy gets processed out of jail. He walked out into the parking lot, gets into his car, pulls out onto the road, starts to drive away. The deputy pulls him over and arrests him for driving on a suspended license. Takes him back in, and he has to post bond on the suspended license charge so that he could have his weekend out of jail.
Oh, how is that not entrapment? I mean, talk about spiking the football. Come on.
He could have had somebody pick him up.
Yeah. No, don't disagree, but yeah, that was a little spike in the football in that one.
When you have created that persona for yourself, though.
Yeah.
When you have been that difficult to deal with in 3 counties at that point.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
All right. So on our nonsensical ramblings, here's my first one. The random thought that just popped into my mind.
All right.
In honor of yesterday being March 8th, which means it was 308 day.
Uh-huh.
What is your favorite 308 and what would you use it for?
If I could get a quality like back when Remington was still Remington, it would just be a Remington 700. And would use it for all the things I'd use a rifle for, basically. I shoot pigs now when I get a chance to go with a Ruger American Ranch and 6.5 Grendel. I just do that with the 308.
Yeah.
And if I ever get a chance to go out west with a famous long range shooting instructor and shoot like pigs at like 400 yards and stuff, that's probably what I would take it for.
Yeah, that would be a good option. That would be a good option. Let me see. I am biased, but I am still a huge fan of the Scar 17 and 308. When I used it competitively on the circuit, I was somewhere 12, 13,000 documented rounds without a malfunction.
Okay.
And that was everything under the sun, including some cheap Wolf 308 just to see if it would cycle it. And still 1.5 inch accurate. And yeah, it man, that's kind of, I was fortunate that I went with it, and I actually SBR'd it once my competitive career left over. And so now sports, kind of like you see in all the special operations community, run the short barrels and it runs suppressed, and it's just man, it's a beautiful setup. And I tell you, there's something about throwing a 308 across a room that really makes you feel like a man.
Yeah.
And
I don't have much experience with the 308, and I have no experience with the Scar.
yeah, well, fortunately, you know somebody that can rectify that situation. Yeah, I'll bring my Scar, you bring the 365. We'll trade and play a little show and tell.
All right.
Yeah, interesting, because so that'll dovetail into like I certainly think that for certain departments, yours included, that has a decent amount of rural county to patrol, having a larger caliber than a 5.56. Now, of course, we can go down the road of what that means or what those options are. I think would be a very useful tool, because I know conversations with you and I have come up in the past about running intermediate carbine classes. The rifle's the rage right now, and it has been for a while, and it will continue to be, the M4s and versions of a 5.56. But even when we do these classes, I mean, they're 50-yard classes. Maybe 100 yards if we get lucky. But you start thinking about all these rural counties, and if something goes wrong on some piece of property, and you've got 200 or 300 yards from the guy's front driveway to the house and nothing but wheat field between you and him, all of a sudden that 5.56 doesn't seem to have as much potency when a guy's behind cover, when he's barricaded, and you got 300 yards of space between you. And we're having a patrol or a sergeant or a patrol sergeant having some type of scout rifle setup or some type of semi-auto rifle, that they can bring a little bit more firepower or a little bit more punch to that situation because of the distance involved. I think that might be something for the more rural counties, or people that have rural territory.
Yeah, but the thing is there too, though, is you're going to have training environments where they can actually get out and stretch the rifle and test those capabilities.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've got people who have never fired their patrol carbine further than 50 yards because 50 yards is the range we have available.
Yeah, that's the reality of that. It's that mentality of, well, we will never be in a situation where we're going to need to use of force more than 50 yards. So your bean counters justify that by saying, things like that. And I'll just take them in any Walmart parking lot. I guarantee you find 100 yards across a Walmart parking lot, plus a lot more. But yeah, and that's always going to be your downside with that is finding the right facilities to conduct that type of training at. But just to talk of, under the 308 banner, I think it still has application in those types, or a 6.5 Creedmoor, or some version of that. you know, for necessity out there. Does every patrol officer need to be running 308 out in the county? You know, probably not, but it's probably wouldn't be a bad idea if a shift supervisor had one in his trunk for those occasions that might crop up where distance now becomes a serious factor. You know, but
Which platform would you suggest for that? Would it be a SCAR?
no, because at that point I don't see that as a semi-auto problem. I see that more as your bolt guns. I mean,
Yeah.
the training goes along with it. There's plenty of high quality, affordably priced. I mean, you can pick up probably 3 high quality bolt guns, or at the very least 2 high quality 308 bolt guns with optics for the price of 1 SCAR. And it's capable, but just for that role, that intermediate interdiction role, that set up a perimeter, wait for something, or you have a perimeter and somebody is engaging you at 200 or 300 yards and you've set up a perimeter, but you need some type of capability to fight back more effectively than a 5.56. So something like that. Yeah, I would think that would be right down the lines of, you know, Cooper Scout rifle type concept, you know, the Rugers, you know, anything that offers a detachable box magazine, you know, 18-inch barrel, some version of that with a nice 2 to 10 type scope, you know.
So I'm going to argue surplus M1 Garand for that.
Well, so the problem with the M1 Garands, right? And
There is no problem with the M1, sir.
I stand corrected. I agree with you on that. And assuming this is not a joke back to my last comment the last time I was about clearing my house with an M1 Garand, because a lot of Germans learned that it's still quite maneuverable in tight quarters.
Yeah.
But now the problem with that is at 30-06 capability, the problem is it's difficult to scope it. Because of the ejection pattern, it has to be an off center line scope, and the accuracy, it's the same issue that you have with the M1As, which are just the next generation of an M1 Garand. Was they take a lot of work to get them accurized to the level that you would want for a role like that.
Well, if you have read your Stephen Hunter novels, you know that it is 100% possible.
No, absolutely it is. I'm saying now, when you look at the resources and the money that you put in to getting that platform to perform in that window,
Yeah.
now you say, well, maybe we just go and get the SCAR then, you know, or some other version.
What about that Springfield Socom 16? Did that, you know, that I remember
Oh
when
my
it was
God, you did
released,
this
but
intentionally.
it never.
You did this intentionally. Because, God, you talk about just poking the Viking. Oh, I think the M1A SOCOM is the biggest fraud that has ever been perpetrated on the firearms industry, right? This whole idea of bring enough gun and all this and this idea, oh my God. The problem with the M1A SOCOM, right, is that they cut the barrel right to the edge of the gas piston and the gas block. So the only way, they have no dwell time in that gun. And for those, you know, the people may be asking what dwell time is, you know, when you have a gas port and then there has to be a certain amount of barrel after the gas port before the bullet exits, so that while the bullets pass the gas port, all the gas can pressurize the gas system and cycle the action. Well, when you take the barrel and you cut it right down next to the gas port, you don't have any dwell time. So now how do you overcome that? Because the fraction of a second that the gas is starting to go into the port to cycle the gun is also the fraction of a second that the bullet has cleared the muzzle and all the gases are starting to go. So Springfield basically put a muzzle brake on it. But the way that's designed, it's also like a booster, similar to if you look at any of the AK-74 Krinkovs, whether it's the 545 or the 7.62 version. And at the end, they have this like little bulbous tank with this little flash suppressor. Well, that's a booster because it has the same issue, right? There's no dwell time. So they create this little chamber that creates enough back pressure to cycle the gun. So Springfield did the same thing. And so they kind of created this booster with this muzzle brake and these ports. Well, the ports are kind of from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So now you have a short barrel 308, 16 inches, all right? You have a booster so that the gun will even work correctly. And then through the booster and through the amount of recoil you get, you put muzzle ports on the top. So I don't know about you, but if you've ever shot a short barrel 308, you will set things on fire because of the muzzle flash. So Springfield markets this to law enforcement. I kid you not, there are those memes out there where they show the gun go off or something, you know, and then the next screen is they flash to the little mini nuclear cloud going. That nuke cloud appears every single time you shoot that M1A SOCOM under anything but high noon sun. And I ran a low light class where a guy came through with that rifle. I kid you not, it was a nuclear mushroom cloud that lit up the whole side of the range every time he shot. And I was so blinded by the flash of him shooting that I grabbed onto his belt buckle to make sure that as he walked through the shoot house, I was with him because I was done. I could not see. I don't know how he could see. And the concussion and the muzzle blast from this thing absolutely blinded the user, let alone everything. It's just, and then to turn around and market this at law enforcement, it was just like, oh my God. I mean, this is a fraud. Have you people not ever tried to even shoot this rifle in those environments, let alone shoot it in a dark hallway inside a house? It's just, it's absolutely the worst rifle.
But it's cool though.
For that app. Oh, absolutely. I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. Right now, if they came out there and, you know, they changed their marketing campaign to the M1A, first of all, they name it SOCOM, you know, this and that. They come out there and be like, you know, instead of bring enough gun, you know, your law enforcement solution and all those other slogans that they, when they first came out, they were pushing. If they came out and be like M1A SOCOM, rattle your friend's fillings, you know, it'd be like, okay, that was pretty cool, you know, yeah, you can go out there and do all this. But I mean, it's a factory loudener and it excels at what it does, you know. And so the concept that you're going to push this as, give it, first of all, the name of SOCOM, like somehow special operations is using this, and then push it on the law enforcement market was just, you obviously have nobody in your employ that has any idea what law enforcement does, because this is about as unsuitable as it gets. Like, I equate this to police departments getting surplus MG42s for concerts and festival riot control. That's how poor of a decision this is. But yes, so.
Well, the thing is that a Marlin 1895 guide gun and 4570 would accomplish that task just as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of throwing cinder blocks at people. And, 4570 does it now. Okay, so since we're on this,
If it's good enough for the American bison, it's good enough to solve our problem.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Now, what I actually think would make a great patrol rifle, it'll never happen. But what would make a very good high quality patrol rifle, I think, really are AK-47s or their modern derivatives of such. They're compact, they're lightweight, they're ultra reliable. And when you talk about cops who put those things in the racks, and when you pull them out for inspection, French fries and donut crumbs and everything fall out of the action. Good modern ones with good modern ammunition are certainly accurate enough inside 100 yards and most likely in 50. They offer you increased performance of a 30 cal bullet. They offer increased performance against barrier penetration. They're simple to maintain and run. But the problem is always going to be, or even the modern ones, you have the ability to run, red dot sights and lights and equip them. And on some of them, the cost is right, but you will never be able to overcome the image of an AK as a terrorist gun.
Right. And
so when I run AK operator classes, or when I see these guys and, and they have their whole SHTF stuff and, this and that, and, they want to run without AKs. I'm like, guys, I'm telling you now from this perspective, I don't care how 100% in the right you are, and all of the reasons and effectiveness that this is a good choice, because most likely I'll agree with you. But the problem is when me, the police officer, rolls up on a scene in the middle of some type of active shooter gunfight and you have an AK in your hand, AK equals terrorist, and you're getting shot first, no questions asked. Now, you don't have to like it, and you can, oh, that's not right, and this and that, and training, blah, blah, blah. Not going to disagree with you. But I'm telling you, you jump out and you helping a school shooting. I mean, you're doing the most righteous thing you can, preventing, a school bus being, whatever, fill in the blank. But you do it with an AK, and the first guy on scene that's got a badge is going to shoot you, because AK equals bad guy.
Or shoot at you.
Well, that's fair. But AK equals bad guy.
Yeah.
And until that image changes, and I don't think it ever will, that becomes a huge problem and consequence for people that want to use those in those roles. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is, and I wish it wasn't that way, because I think on certain situations, a very capable platform and offers a lot of benefits, but the stigmatism of what it is, that image, what it means is going to cause you more problems, I think, than all those other benefits of running one.
For the role that you described initially at the beginning of this nonsensical rambling, I really think that Ruger American Ranch and 6.5 Grendel would fit the bill.
Absolutely. The Ruger Ranch series. Not a big fan of 223. I'm not a big fan of 5.56 or 223 bolt guns.
Yeah.
I think they're worthless. Right. For anything, even potentially anything, even borderline hunting. So if you you want to go out and shoot prairie dogs, take a 223. All right, good. I'll take my DMR semi-auto 223 and I'll engage them and be just as successful as you are, right? Because we're at that time now with the technology and the build quality of highly accurate 5.56 semi-auto platforms. So I think a 223 bolt gun is worthless. But the 300 Blackout, the 6.5 Grendel, with the detachable mags and that Ruger platform, the accuracy, the value you get out of that platform, I think that's absolutely a viable solution.
Well, the hog population in Northeast Georgia does not like it one bit at all.
No, and the only reason, as I know we've batted around before, and the only reason I don't have a 6.5 Grendel Ruger American is I just can't get around the fact that I have AR-15s or semi-autos in 6.5 Grendel that are MOA accurate.
Yeah.
And so when I have a semi-auto platform that's giving me all the same performance and then some on top of a bolt gun platform, it's tough for me, other than for nostalgia type purposes or pleasure or just enjoy it, to go with that. So I would rather save the bolt gun for something the larger caliber, the 6.5 Grendel or some other boutique, caliber or something like that. But
Yeah, I initially did an AR upper in 6.5 Grendel, but after I saw the bolt break on yours, I was like, yeah,
yeah,
I'm going with a bolt gun. And I sold that upper. And it's changed hands 2 or 3 times amongst other deputies and it's taken out some deer, etc. But I really like that. I I prefer bolt guns and lever guns to ARs. It's just me, just a
yeah,
preference thing.
yeah.
And it's compact and handy enough that I've been able to take hog on the run with it. And then I've been able to get in the stand and because I got a 1/8 scope on it and dial the scope up and take them at distance. And that's got enough punch to get out there and punch through that shoulder blade on them and do what it needs to do. And I've been pleased with the whole setup. The magazines that I bought uh, were a little rough at first, and it's taking some wearing in with the mag dragging across a little bit, but and everything. But I've been really pleased with it.
No, I think it's a very capable platform, especially now that I think Magpul now is finally coming out with some compatible
Mhm.
stocks for that platform too, which will
Yeah,
increase the handling ergonomics. I think that's an excellent option.
yeah.
Yeah, but
I heard a rumor that you bought a revolver this past week, and you were just shocked to learn that it didn't come with 3 magazines.
I tell you, yes, and if for all y'all that aren't familiar, I'm a
Look at
big
the Pennsylvania guy busting out with a y'all. How about that?
oh yeah, y'all and all y'all. I understand. And technically I now I think I can claim Southern heritage now because I have lived more of my life in the South than in the North. So
Um,
that maybe make me a damn Yankee, but
no, there's a term, and you've got about half of it. So
yeah,
it's
I'm it's going to be tough to push me back across that northern border for any permanent time. But yeah. So anyone that knows me or has listened to me before is I am a firm believer, and a man has got to know his limitations. Famous Clint Eastwood line. And my limitations are anything and everything having to do with revolvers. I don't shoot them well. I'm not a big fan of them. I see very limited applications. And if any of your listeners have heard me on other podcasts, in some way, shape, or form, that opinion has come out. All right. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate them. It just means I just have very little use for them. It's the total Quigley Down Under at the end of the movie when he smokes those dudes with a revolver and he says, "I never said I couldn't shoot it. I just said I didn't have much use for one." So that's kind of me with the revolver. So, but I am spending more and more time out in the country and in the woods and in the areas of the country and out in the deep woods where you are not the apex predator. And normally I have my 10 millimeter Springfield, and I run that with some pretty stout loads. I've been very happy with the performance. It's a single stack 1911. I'm a huge fan. I can run it strong and aggressively. And really, there's not too many things on this earth that are going to be very happy getting shot in the face 7 or 8 times with a 10 millimeter. Right. But I recognize that occasionally, spice is the variety of life, and or variety is the spice of life. And so I came across a deal, and where it comes back to is the second firearm I ever bought for myself. The very first gun I ever bought when I turned 22 was a Glock 17, a Gen 2. Gen 2s had just come out, and I picked one up. They were all the rage, had it for a long time. The second thing I bought was a Smith & Wesson 629 44 Magnum with 6.5-inch barrel. and I actually used it to hunt deer in northern Pennsylvania. And wasn't very successful with it because it was just iron sights. I didn't do the scope and everything, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that. And then of course, just being the poor college student, bills came and that got sold. And I've always enjoyed it. And the only thing I didn't like about it was I thought the barrel was a little too long. So I was able to realize, going through just revolvers and find out that, Smith offers two. So they offer a 4-inch model and a 5-inch model. And I was looking for something a little bit more powerful to have with me when I was out in the backcountry than the 10mm. And I realized I wanted a 44. And so I kind of was waffling back and forth between the 4 and the 5, the 4 being easy to carry, on your hip, and the 5 a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, but you get a little more velocity, a little more performance. You can, the 4s I kind of think were more of a purely defensive, where a 5 I felt like I could actually go and use it to hunt with, just because of the extra barrel length, the extra sight radius, the extra performance you get. Well, lo and behold, just right place, right time, right price. And yes, I picked up a 629, and I went to go pick it up. And when I opened up the box, I really had about a 2 or 3 second moment of panic and a little bit of anger that I'm like, what, where's my damn magazines? And I mean, literally for about 3 seconds, my mind went blank, like, where the F are my magazines, dude? And then I realized, oh, this is a revolver. And yeah, so I'm not ashamed to admit that, because I admit my fault. And yeah, I'm not, yeah. So anyways, once I quickly recompose myself that this guy was not in fact trying to rip me off by keeping the magazines out of my revolver, I thanked him, and we went our separate ways. And yeah, so I am now the proud owner of a 5-inch 629. So I'll be loading some ammo for it shortly and going out and having a little fun with it.
Have you gotten a carry rig for it yet?
So as part of the deal, I did, but it's one of those Kenai holsters
I'm not
that
familiar.
it sits across your chest.
Okay.
So it's kind of like
Mhm.
the military ones where you
Yeah.
carry like a 45 for pilots or things. So it's the
Mhm.
same type of thing where you carry it and it kind of sits at a slight angle across your
Yeah.
chest. And at some point I'll pick up a legitimate holster for your hip or something like that. But right now that's all I've got, and it'll be a while before I get there. As far as getting a traditional, a good holster for it, and do some research on that and find a good one. But obviously for me it's too big to even try to think about any type of inside the waistband with that kind of a barrel length. So it'll just be an on your hip holster. So something that, probably leather, something traditional, maybe some Kydex, maybe something. I'm kind of trying to lean towards the Kydex just because I'm more familiar with it. And I can dial up the retention on the retention screw to what I want and not have to defeat some type of lever thumb break. But I also don't like the idea of the Kydex, because as it gets dusty in there, that dust is going to scratch up that revolver and the cylinder. So I think
Look
I
at
know isn't there
look
somebody that does Kydex, but they do like felt lined on the inside?
Garrett Industries.
Okay.
If they still make rigs, I believe they used to have a suede lined Kydex
Hmm.
rig.
Yeah. So something like that. Nothing I'm in obviously nothing I'm in a hurry for, but
Yeah.
yeah. So it was one of those things where I've been keeping my eye out for a while, and the right deal came
Mhm.
along at the right time. And yeah, so I now have it.
Yeah. Now, obviously, here comes the question of, have you gotten the 1894 Marlin and 44 Magnum to go along with it yet?
I have
Uh,
not. I've been
s-
looking,
well, I want to
right?
caution you about something here with
Okay.
that. Um, I know you hand load, and
Yes.
so you're gonna find the load that works perfectly with that 629. And once you do that, that load's not going to be the one that works perfectly in your 1894. And so then you're going to find the load that works in your 1894 perfectly, and it ain't going to work in your 629. And then you're going to be mad and everything. Just stick with.
Yeah. Actually, what I'm looking for is I'm a big fan of the cowboy version with the octagonal barrels.
Yeah.
in the flats. I just
Mhm.
something about that. Maybe it's because everything modern is all round barrels. And so you see that, and it just, to me, that's an iconic image of the classic Old West when they, rather than make it round, they put the
Yeah,
octagon barrels and the flats, and and so I kind
yeah.
of like that look better. But I don't know. You know, I've heard that the lever guns, like somebody was telling me that like you can't run the 300 grain 44 Magnums because they're too long, and something to do with the lift gate and how it pulls it out. They don't feed right. And then somebody was telling me like, be careful of the 45 long Colts, because if you use the really semi-wad cutter, like
Mhm.
Keith type bullets, they have all those sharp edges and they hook on stuff and they don't feed well unless you use
Yeah.
round nose. And then other guys say, oh yeah, but run the 4440s because their bottleneck cartridges are round nose bullets and they feed like butter. I'm like, but it's a 4440. It's like a 1870 40 Smith and Wesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's, yeah. So
Yeah, I don't have much experience with the 1894 and 44 Magnum, just 'cause I've never had one. Excuse me. And I don't see them come through my lever gun classes that often. I see a fair amount of 38 357, just don't see a lot of 44 mag. Um, and what I have found in the 38 357s is that the shape of the bullet has a lot to do with whether or not the bullet will, or the round will feed through
mhm.
the action on the lever gun. Um, I would presume that's going to be the case with the 44 Magnum as well. But
Yeah.
I don't think there's as much variety as you're
See,
going to see in the.
I appreciate the tactic of having a rifle and a
Mhm.
handgun that ran the same ammunition, especially at that time period in the Old West,
Yeah.
where you might not get into a town to resupply for months and months and months. So that made sense to me. But in modern time, I look at it like, well, if I'm going to pay the price in the weight and effort to carry a rifle, I'm going to carry a rifle,
Yeah.
not a pistol caliber carbine, because I don't have, I know I have access to a resupply, whether through the mail or driving or the store, and I'm not going to be 6 months out in the boonies with no ability to resupply. So I understand the logic behind it initially. I just don't think that logic necessarily is, um, the advice is as strong or as good of advice it is given modern times
Right.
with the access to resupply and things that we have. So, but I'll tell you, I'm an idea guy. I always come up with ideas. And I actually hit Remington, the custom shop guy, right before Remington went under. So um, I think that if you made a lever action gun chambered for a 458 SOCOM, you would have a hell of a setup. Because one, ballistically, it's virtually identical to the old 4570, right? It is about 2/3 of the length of a 4570. So in the same length tube, you're probably going to pick up 2 or 3 rounds capacity. It's a bottleneck cartridge, so that improves any type of feeding, and all of the 458, or a lot of the 458 hollow points, which are highly effective, good performance bullets, are hollow points. And now you don't have to worry about them being in line in the magazine tube and having some type of detonation from the bullet hitting the primer. And I think, with the rebated rim, that you could make that work in a modern lever action, get modern cartridge performance, have better feeding and reliability because of the bottleneck. And, I think that would be a great idea for trying to modernize, the lever action. Now, I'm sure, there's somebody that's going to be way smarter than me to jump in the comments and be like, well, you can't do it because of this. I'm like, all right, well, that's fine. But, you know, the way I would have been thinking through it, I would think that that might be a very interesting, you know, commission a custom gunsmith that works on this stuff and be like, hey, you think you could do this in 458 SOCOM and see what happens?
Yeah. When I first developed my lever gun doctrine, I did it at a time when a Marlin 336 and 3030 was the only centerfire rifle I had.
Mhm.
And then the other was, in the wake of the Sandy Hook stuff and everything, you just couldn't find black rifles in any gun shop in the area. But
Mhm.
there were racks of used lever guns for, from 200 on up to like $600 for a nicer one. Now you walk into a store and a new lever gun costs more than an entry level AR-15 does.
Oh my God.
And it's just ridiculous that we've got to that point.
I um I have been waiting, and it's only within the last couple, maybe it was shot this year, but now Marlin under the Ruger banner
Mhm.
has finally released the um the traditional lever action 4570. So blued wood, the oversized loop, the full magazine tube.
Oversized
And
loops are like staples. They're from the devil.
and they're coming threaded from the factory,
Yeah.
which is great, right? Because Hornady makes some subsonic 4570 loads, which I think are going to be killer for being in like a deer stand or a deer blind that you might use for archery, but you might have a 25-yard shot with subsonic 4570. But anyway, so I've been waiting for this one, and then there's been a lot of reviews about the new models coming out of Ruger and Marlin, and that the tolerances are tighter and they're really
Mhm.
smooth, and everyone's glowing reports. So they finally came out. I was really excited, been waiting for it, and I go look, it's like $1,200 or $1,300. I'm
Yeah.
like, damn it.
Yeah. I taught a social lever gun class this weekend, and traditionally I said I've put that into my whole, it's a contract class. And in other words, you got to get 10 of your friends that want to take it, and y'all get together and get the money and a date, and I'll come teach, because the class traditionally just hasn't sold. But I had a host nearby that was not going to cause me an extra night in the hotel and everything. So we paired it with a 1 day shotgun and a 1 day lever gun class, figuring that the shotgun class would sell. And then the lever gun class, if I got enough to make all my travel expenses, fine. And if not, we would cancel it. Well, it completely flipped. The lever gun class sold twice what the shotgun class did.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And,
awesome.
and it just never happens that way. And so there were a couple of guys that work in gun shops that have had a chance to look at the new Ruger produced 336s. And, they're saying, hey, good things. But the
Yeah.
price point is more than what you can get into like a M&P Sport or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just don't see people other than traditionalists who want, the
Well,
3030.
maybe I don't know if it's because whoever handles that on their
Mhm.
marketing team or research team or something,
Yeah.
because as soon as Marlin folded and Remington folded,
Yeah.
every Marlin out there like tripled in price overnight. Like I see guys selling
Mhm.
the old Marlin 4570s with whatever the guy's proof stamp on the barrel is,
JM.
200, 2000,
Yeah.
2500, 2750. I'm like, you people have lost your mind. These are not collectible items.
Well, the thing is when people all of a sudden they can't get what they want, it's somehow, supply and demand thing. I carried a third generation Smith and Wesson when third generation Smith and Wessons were not a highly sought out pistol. It was my issue duty gun. And now I see on all the gun forums and stuff, people going nuts whenever someone like gets a load of third gen trade-ins.
Really?
And I'm like, okay, why did you scoff at me 15 years ago when that's what I was forced to carry?
It's funny.
And the other thing is that Smith hasn't made parts for it since the M&P was introduced. So what are you going to, if you can't find a supply of extractor springs, etc.?
Yeah, it's almost like you have to buy two, so you have a spare one you can cannibalize to keep one
Yeah.
running. It's kind of like the Iranians with the F-14s. They just keep they're down to like four because they just keep cannibalizing whether they had to keep four in the air. But and maybe it's because we come from a time when we remember second gen Smiths and third gen Smiths coming out and how much of an improvement they were.
Yeah.
And what I always remember about the Smiths shooting them was that the double action pull was horrible. I mean, atrocious. But that single action, oh my God, that was a tight reset, like 1911 style quality, hardly any movement, a quick reset. I mean, it was almost to the point where you just cranked off that first round just to get it out of the gun so you could get to the single action mode and get to work.
I always thought they needed to produce that gun in a single action only with a 1911 style thumb safety on it.
They
Kind of
did.
like that Legion that you've got just off camera there.
Yeah. They I always felt like they did right on the 45 side. So when you had like the original 4506s and you had the big 5-inch barrels, I mean, they were big guns, like you're a Miami Vice fan, yeah, Sonny Crockett had a Bren 10 for a while, but only for like the first season or two. Then he rotated to a 4506, and I just don't remember Smith and Wesson ever coming out with a good 4.5, 5-inch. Everything was always there really, really compact, 3.5-inch and all the 30. And then once again, oh my God, I can't even say that because then like your channel will get a strike. Who was and I'm going to do genius that came up with the Smith and Wesson numbering systems? A 39, a 4506, a 6906, a 6908, the 3913s, it had to be somebody who was an accountant that numbers made sense to them. Because it's the same thing like on the Revolver side, just all the different models and just like, why was that? Because now what do you have? You got Smith & Wesson, M&P, M&P 2.0, it just like all that stuff makes sense. It's like, okay, well, that's the name of this. Why, oh my God.
Well, the numbering system makes sense if they had stuck with the numbering system. And like all the third generations had 4-digit model numbers, and the numbers actually meant something. Like if it ends in a 6, it's a stainless steel frame. If it ends in a 3, and it's aluminum frame. And then like the third 0, whether it's a 3913 or 3906 or whatever, that denotes whether it's a double action only or a traditional double action, etc. But then they come out with this value line, third generation, they give it 3-digit model numbers.
Yeah, like the 910. Was that the Smith and Wesson, like it was a Bargett basement?
Like the 915, I think they had.
Yeah, something like that. And the thing was, that wouldn't have been bad if that in everything they did with the marketing system, they put that puzzle key to solving what these numbers meant. Like you see a Smith and Wesson, order your favorite Smith and Wesson, first two numbers, this, caliber, second number, but they protected that information like it was an Enigma decoding machine. It's like nobody knew what those numbers stood for.
Well, I will say that when I went to the 3-day armorer school on the Smith third gens, that was in the manual.
And so right there's your problem.
The 3-day armorer school. Where's the Glock?
Pistol should not have a 3-day armorer school.
Which is why I wrote the proposal to go to Glocks when I got back from it. Not only that, you had to buy a toolkit that was $100 and something bucks.
Oh man!
And then I ended up buying an extra piece because you had to hand hand fit the extractors to each individual gun, and you had a go no go gauge. And like there's this little pad on the extractor. You'd have to take a little bit off of it, a little bit off of it, a little bit off of it, put it in the pistol, go with the gauge, go no go, go no go, go. Yeah, all right, I got to take a little bit more off, and you keep going, and then one file stroke too many, throw that one out, start on a new one.
Oh yeah, no, I
And
remember. So when I came through with the state in when we graduated, I started in 93 and we got out in 94. The class before us was the last class to get the 10 millimeters. Now we didn't have the 1006, we had the 1076.
frame mounted decocker.
The frame mounted decocker, right? Because the FBI had like the 1066, which I think it had the traditional safety. You know, I think the 7-6. But you know, guys were telling me that it was totally random. Like the firearm instructors at the time be like, yeah, we've been online, and like half the guys on their line never had a trouble with their 10 millimeters, the Smiths. You know, they ran fine. The other 10 guys on the line, they couldn't get through a magazine. It was just totally. So then they actually complain, you know, obviously to Smith and Wesson, and Smith and Wesson's trying to, you know, because we piggybacked off the FBI contract, they sent down armors, and they basically sent armors to every division with Dremels to do throat and polish jobs to get them to run. And that fixed some of them, but it didn't fix all of them. And so then mine was actually, I think, the first class that we got issued the SIG 228s and 9 millimeter was that. And then I think to this day, the state is still running SIGs. We haven't left SIG since then.
All right, so I went through the academy with a Smith 4006.
Okay.
And so everybody at my agency had those. One of the other agencies that used the same academy, they had their officers were going through with Smith 4006s, but the agency was also in the initial phases of purchasing Glocks as an authorized substitute. Well, at the time, a now defunct ammo company had the state contract to provide practice ammo for the training center. And they were loading this ammo with hollow points, but they were polishing it all with corn cobs after, you know, the whole manufacturing process. And little bits of corn cob were getting in the hollow point, and then they would come out of the hollow point during recoil as you were firing. And a female officer from the county police that was issuing them at that time, her gun completely locked up from one of these corn cobs, to the fact you couldn't even unload the gun. It was so locked up. And so one of their staff shows up one day and hands her a Glock and like leaves with her Smith. And so she was the only one in her academy class that had the Glock from that agency. And you know, it's like I'm looking around and said, do I really want this gun that got locked up? Because all the Glocks in the class ran fine.
Right.
And we stayed with the Glock, stayed with the Smith. Probably carried that one for another couple of years. And then the armor took it, did a complete rebuild on it, like all the new springs, everything, put a new extractor and everything in it for me. And then we traded and got new Smith 4006s because the chief said we needed new guns, but he wasn't going to buy new gear in addition to new guns. And then later we had those guns in service for like 3 years. And then I did the spearhead of the transition to Glocks after I came back from the Smith & Wesson Armor School.
Yeah, I had nothing but SIGs with all my agencies until around 2015-ish. And then we went to the Glock 19.
Yeah.
So we had I started on the 9 millimeter 228s. Then we went to the 9 millimeter 229s. No,
you were in the Glock 33 when I met you, though.
I had one, yeah.
Okay.
So we had I take that back. So we started with the 228s and 9 millimeter. Then we were one of the first agencies to jump to 357 SIG, because SIG wanted to promote the round and they needed big agencies for their promotional. So they offered to swap our agency out for free. And we took it because, I mean, the 357 SIG, it's got a lot of haters, but I'm a huge fan. I mean, that thing
Yeah.
performs. I've seen it perform. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother episode. But so we ended up with 229 SIGs and 357 SIG. And I had that through the rest of my career. And then when I came on with my new agency, we had the choice of a 226 or a 229. Well, the 226 has always just fit my hand better.
Mhm.
And so then I went to a 226 357 SIG for a duty gun. And I had that all the way through until into the Glock. But you're talking about, yes, off duty, I carried for personal, I carried a Glock 32,
Yeah.
which is a 19 size,
Yeah.
but in 357 SIG because my agency was issuing the ammo.
Yeah.
And that it's similar to your experience with the P10C, that you find the compacts shoot and track a little faster than the full length. Absolutely the case on that Glock 32. I could hammer with that mid-size 357 SIG, and it had a lot of bark. I mean, concussion blast. But man, that thing was smooth to shoot, and I could really run that gun, and I could run it stronger and faster than I could the Glock 31, which was, the full size 357 SIG. And the only reason I gave that up was when we went to the Glock 19s. We, as part of going to the 9, we traded all of our 357 SIG out of our inventories and swapped it for 9. So all of a sudden I had no more access to
No
other
more
people's
OPA.
ammo. Yeah, other people's ammo. And and so, and of course at that time, SIG's always a very expensive round. And
Yeah.
so at that time that one went away because it just, I couldn't supply it anymore and practice with it to the level that I wanted to. But I loved that gun. Loved that compact 357 SIG.
When I was shooting GSSF regularly and somewhat IDPA, I did an experiment where I took the same trigger group and swapped it into a 34, shot a bunch of scored courses with it, then swapped it into a 17, shot a bunch of scored courses with it, and then swapped it into a 19. And then I took it and repeated that in a couple of matches. And I shot the 17 better than the 34 and the 19 better than the 17. And so I got rid of the 34 and I kept eventually all the 17s but one. I kept one that I have a sentimental attachment to. But just the 19, I like the recoil impulse better. And and all these people were like, well, I want a 17 slide on a 19, or excuse me, a 17 slide on a 19 grip frame. Like, no, I want the 19 slide on everything. And then finally the Glock 45 came out, and it's like, I've been trying to tell you guys.
No, and we kind of had that with the FN. When the FNS came out, it was a full size, essentially it was a Glock 17 frame with a 19 slide.
Yeah.
And I still have one of those that is kind of, that's that kind of gun. Like if I end up leaving a gun in the truck, which I very rarely do, but it's that one, like, it's a first gen model. They don't make them anymore. If my truck caught fire and the pistol melted, it really wouldn't break my heart. It's I pull it out of the bag. It's got a spot of rust on it. I kind of lick it, wipe it off. I'm like, whatever.
Color it with a Sharpie.
Yes, believe me, I've done the black Sharpie thing on the sights because a little bit of rust on the corners. But it shoots marvelous. Love it. Love how it shoots full size. Yeah, it's the same concept as that Glock 45.
Well, just before we started recording, you uttered some blasphemy, and we have to touch on that before we're out of here tonight. You actually, like I said, this makes me feel better than my CZ P10. That can't be true. It can't be true.
Yeah. So I owe all of my P10 CZ love affair to you, because after trying the compact and how more as much as I was impressed with the CZ P10 series with the triggers from the factory, I was more impressed with the ergonomics of because even though I'm a big guy and I have big hands, I have short fingers.
Yeah.
Like, for example, your traditional CZ75s, I can't run them because my thumb's not short enough or is not long enough to reliably take off the
Yeah.
safety. So, but I've always for years, I had an SP01 that I pulled off a prize table, but I got the decocker model.
Hmm.
And I think it's a DB or something like that,
Yeah.
and shot it. And I mean, the CZ is great. I mean, that's going to lead us into the new Dan Wesson, the
Yeah.
DX or whatever that is at some point. Um, but I always liked it. So what I was more impressed with was the grip and the ergonomics of the P10. And then when I got a chance to take the F model, which is the full size,
Yeah.
and saw that even with a full size grip, there was still enough room that I never had to worry about the bottom of my hand getting pinched on reloads because the bottom of my hand's at the bottom of the grip. Just the circumference, how it fit, the trigger, then shooting it, seeing the reliability, seeing the accuracy. I mean, it just, yeah. I mean, I still to this day, if I had to rank polymer 9mm pistols, the M&Ps, Glocks, Walthers, Canics, right now with my experience shooting all of them and having shot all of them, the P10F is number one on my list right now. But I'll say this, it is because, and even before I was in law enforcement, when I would go to the range with my dad and he would take me shooting, his duty gun at that time, among many difference, was a 226 and 9mm, the old ones made in Germany. And so anytime I pick up a 226, it's like your old favorite guitar or whatever, fill in the blank. It just, I always feel like I'm coming home. And some of that is I spent 20 years in SIGs as a carry gun, is shooting it, training, everything. I had SIGs before I even got into law enforcement.
Yeah.
So a 226, and now of course I really love the Legion series because they did the ergonomic upgrades. They put the really nice checkering on it, really good grip. So the 226, I just always come back to that. We've had conversations where,
Mhm.
if you slapped a Glock 17 or a 226 down on me, it's like, hey, you got your choice of duty gun. I'm probably grabbing the 226 just because I shoot it better. It feels better. I feel more confident with it. I feel more accurate with it. And so sitting in the back of the safe was my Legion 226 single action only, which is just along the lines of what you said with the Smith and Wesson should have made a single action only version of their 6906s or 5906s. SIG really did a wonderful job making a single action only option, because now I get all the benefits of a cocked and locked 1911, which I have documented over 1 million rounds through 1911 style pistols. So I'm intimately comfortable and familiar with a manual thumb safety and a single action gun, added with the improved ergonomics on a SIG, with the accuracy, with now it's just that SIG tight single action trigger, has the flat trigger very much like the 365s or the 320s, I guess, in certain versions. And I took it out today, and even though it doesn't have a red dot sight on it, man, shot like butter, felt confident. I had a really good practice session, connecting all the way out 25, 50 yards, ups, and I was like, man, as much as I like that P10 will still be my favorite of polymer pistols. But yeah, I think next time I show up one of your classes, you might see that SIG in the holster and not that P10.
Yeah, the funny thing about the P10C for me is, and I do now have a shadow systems, but I was, when I was looking at them, I was asking people that had the shadows, like, so tell me, why pay more for a Glock than I can buy a Glock for? Well, it's got the trigger, it's got the grip, it's got all this other stuff, and it's everything that you would pay to do to a Glock anyways. Like, but for the same money as a Glock 19, I can buy a P10C, and it's already better than all of that. So if you want a polymer gun, polymer pistol that's much better than a Glock and everything, well, just go buy the CZ.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it, or I do call it,
Mhm.
I call that P10 series, I call them
Yeah.
Glock killers.
Yeah.
Because if I was a salesman, a law enforcement salesman, and they're like, hey, you work on commission, your job is to go around, show a polymer pistol to a police department and try to get them to rotate out of a Glock. The only one that I would feel confident about not walking in there at knowing like, hey, I have no prayer of making any money for this
Mhm.
department would be the P10 line.
Yeah.
And I'd go in there and be like, because I think technically, so when I say Glock killers, I
Mhm.
mean from the features that you get. I think
Yeah.
ergonomics are just night and day. I think the triggers are better. I think they compare in accuracy, and I think they compare in reliability. And I like the fact that the magazines are metal versus polymer. They drop free, they less friction loading when you're doing reloads and tack loads, and they lock in, and it just, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's got a lot going for it. And I think I think if CZ wants to, I think they can really make an aggressive play for some of Glock's footprint in the law enforcement market in the country if that's something in their in their strategic marketing plan. I think they have a real opportunity to do that. But if you don't give me that, or that's not an option, be like, hey, here's an M&P, or here's a Canic, or here's this. I'd be like, yeah, no, man, I'm going to go greet people at Walmart. I'll make money that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I know all the Shadow System guys are screaming Foundation series now. Well, all of that, my experience with the Shadow was before the Foundation System series was released. I do have a 920 Combat, which doesn't have the stupid debris channels cut into the slide.
Mhm.
And my old man curmudgeon coming out again.
No, I'm with you.
It's late. It's 9:30 on a weeknight. Yeah. The only thing I really like about the Shadow systems is the mounting system for the optic.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's the reason I gave one a try. Um, there's some question with the reliability of the guns.
So,
And
and this is be something that I'll follow up with you on, because
yeah,
you have a, a greater depth of knowledge about this. Is SIG offers factory slides now, replacement slides for the 226s that are milled for the sights, right?
mhm,
But I've got to do the research and find out how are they milling them, what plates do you have to use, because at some point in the future, if I decide I want to run a dot on this 226 Legion, I'm either going to have to buy a new slide or send this slide out and have it milled.
yeah,
The only hesitation about getting it milled is they put that Legion logo on the top of the slide right by the rear sight. So if I mill, I'm basically milling that out.
yeah,
And I kind of like the idea of having two slides that I could bounce back and forth between a dot and a regular iron sight. So chances are I'll pick it up. But if I end up deciding to go the mill route,
yeah.
I'll do some work and come back to you for a recommendation on, hey, is this worth it? Is this type of mounting system solid, or is this, because I know we've gone back and forth. How you said like you wouldn't take a Glock MOS because of the mounting system, and as I understand it, they've had some problems with plates and mounting and screws.
I'm not a fan of adapter plates at all. Give me direct milled, which kills, coming from the factory, that gives you certain limited options. If it was private citizen gun, I just have it milled for an acro and
Mhm.
put an acro on it. Buy another slide,
Well,
have it milled for an acro. I think SIG's footprint is they go with the Delta Point Pro footprint. I think.
that would make sense, because I think SIG
Yeah.
and Leupold have a pretty good market relationship between their two
Yeah.
companies.
And that was with
But
the military contracting and stuff as well. I
yeah,
don't know what other stuff fit on it. I do have one of the new 365 carries, which is the macro without the velocity reducer in it. And I'm still waiting for a Holosun EPS carry, which will mount without an adapter plate. And
you gotta let me know.
I did finally go shoot the pistol.
Yeah, you got to let me know next time you're going to be out there, because
Yeah.
I am holding off on the Glock 48
Yeah.
only until I get the 365, because they're really, for me, they're the only two comparable sizes. I mean, there's always the P10C, but I kind of feel like those are just like one size smaller than a P10C. You know, and
Yeah,
for that retirement, that concealed carry, that summer carry, you know,
I have the Glock 48 specifically to have a 10 round gun for when I travel, for just in case I
right.
cross into a jurisdiction, which I allegedly possibly have done twice. A jurisdiction that has a magazine capacity limit and also stuff I'm carrying the 10 round gun, then I'm
Yeah.
fine.
And the thing is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead and finish.
The 365 macro or carry, that whole grip module, is basically carrying the same size gun as a 48, but you get 18 rounds in it in
Right.
factory mags.
Yeah.
Um,
And I tell you the one thing I do like about that is I've shot the 48 and it's a Glock.
mhm.
You know, the ergonomics of it, it's a Glock. But I've held the 365s, and it's the same comparison with like the CZs. So
Mhm.
the ergonomics and the cuts, the 365 just feels so much better in my hand ergonomically, that I'm willing to hold off on the 48 because I want to see how this feels and see what the actual shootability of it is. And if this thing shoots, you know, anywhere near what a 48 does as far as recoil and tracking and, you know, and all the
Yeah.
performance um measurements of the gun when you're actually shooting it, then I'm going to go the 365 route. But I don't want to do that until I've had a chance. So
Yeah.
the next time you're out, let me know. I'll run out there and
Yeah.
I'll throw a scar in the truck.
All right. It just so happens Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. All right. Yeah, I might be able to make that work. All right, I'll get back to
Uh,
you. I'll get you with you offline on that one.
yeah.
But
All right. Well, we've been going about an hour and a half.
that's
What
it.
kind of closing thoughts you got?
Closing thought. Okay, how about this for closing thought?
Uh-huh.
Things that you wish the industry would make. So if anyone from the industry is listening and you can come up with some type of wish list of something that's not available, but you wish they would make it, all right, drop it now.
Uh, easy, 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 easy. Stop putting 14-inch length of pull stocks on rifles and
On
shotguns.
shotguns, yes.
Yeah, make it 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4, and then have spacers for people that need to go out to a longer stock if
Yes,
they need
you
to.
do it with rifles. Why wouldn't you do it with a shotgun?
Yeah, but like you were talking to him about that Henry 9 millimeter
Yeah, the homesteader.
homesteader like thing. It's got a 14-inch length of pull stock on it.
Yes.
Yeah, I can take the Ruger
Oh,
piece.
look who's saying hi. Hey,
Slash is
buddy.
here. I can take the
Yeah.
Ruger PC9, which comes with a 12.5-inch stock on it and has spacers in it if you need to go longer, and do the exact same thing that Henry is doing. So why don't I just do the Ruger?
Right.
Um, and God bless Ruger for coming out with, the 336s and 3030, which is, it made Jesus smile. But they've got those long stocks on them. Put a 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4, 13-inch length of, not 14, not 14.
And I'll tell you, I am not a 30-30 fan,
Uh,
but I'm a huge 35 Remington fan. So I
uh,
have to get, before I can take your social lever gun,
uh,
I have to get my lever gun from a retired employee from my department who's a new employee for your department, and who's been bogarting that thing for the last 2 years. So
yeah, he had CPR and RAP training today. So
okay.
yeah.
I got, oh, so he's back from his vacation.
Yes, he's back
Yeah,
from.
I got
He
it. I
worked.
got
He worked. He's a typical federal employee. Worked 2 weeks and needed a vacation.
right. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I got to reach out for him. So maybe I'll hit him up tomorrow. But
Yeah.
all right. So wish list, you ready?
Yeah.
So in my quest for revolvers, I think a 4-inch 586 is just a beautiful revolver. The full log, the 4-inch barrel, the classic blue, because everything, you want to say everything, but a lot of Smith & Wesson stuff now is the stainless. When they did that nice high polish, just beautiful, beautiful setup, right? Now, I'm not up on my frames, but is that an N frame?
That's an L frame.
So the N frame, what's the 629?
N frame.
All right, so the L frame is like the mid size, or you said it was an N frame.
Yeah, K 586 is an L frame. K
Okay.
and L frames are both considered mid size, and
Okay.
N is considered large size.
So here's what I want.
Mhm.
I want Smith & Wesson because I just the way ammo is, I want to get a revolver so I can go to a revolver class and just
Mhm.
personal develop as an instructor,
Yeah.
get to the point where I know what I don't know about revolvers, things like that, build my knowledge,
Yeah.
get a little practice, but I don't want to suck up a new caliber,
Yeah.
even 38 357. So what I
Well, you
want,
gave me all your 38 ammo, so
right? I know, right? Right. So what I want, here's my wish list, is I want Smith & Wesson to do a 610 10 millimeter, right? But I want him to do it in blue, and I want him to do it on the 5.8 or the N frame,
L
not the
frame.
L frame,
The L frame.
or the L frame, not the
Yeah.
whatever the mid-size frame is. Because right
It's
now
the
they
L.
offer the 610, but it's on the same size frame as the 629, which is massive for a 10 millimeter. Right.
Yeah.
And what in the hell is this 3 7/8 inch barrel? Just give me a legit 4.5 inch barrel. Give me a blued gun, make it a 10 millimeter on the mid-size frame. Because when I go and I pick up a 586, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good. I can trigger
Yeah.
pulls, my short fingers, everything's works. I like
Yeah.
it. And then I go and pick up a 610 and it's on the huge frame. And I'm like, this is stupid. So Smith & Wesson make a mid-frame 10 millimeter true 4.25 inch barrel and make it that beautiful blue that you know how to do to distinguish it from the other 610 in the other frame and stainless. So that would be my wish.
Smith for just a minute there made on the L frame, and I want to say the model number was a 696 in 40 Smith and Wesson, and so they obviously they can fit 10 millimeter
Yeah.
size casings into an L frame. But it was a 40 Smith and Wesson with moon clips, and I think it was aimed at the IDPA custom service revolver market. And
Right.
then IDPA changed the rules and it did its thing.
Yeah.
Now I
No.
don't know whether the L frame would be sturdy enough to handle 10 millimeter.
If it can handle 357 Magnum
Yeah.
and they're doing them in 6, 7, and 8 round cylinders,
Yeah.
It's got to be strong enough to handle a 10.
Yeah. Because see, the 19 Smith revolver was the first of the 357s that Bill Jordan, this is the dream. This is what Smith needs to be making for every cop gun. And then the K-frames just did not hold up to steady diets at 357 Magnum. And so they beefed it up and got the L frame that was where the 586 and the 686 and their fixed sight counterparts, the 581 and the 681 came from.
Right. I'm to the point where, and we've talked about it before, is because I like that L frame better for what I want to be able to do with it. I'm still toying with the idea of picking up an L frame 586 and then sending it off and have it ream so I can run 38 super through it. Because I have super comp with moon clips. So then I wouldn't have to run 357, but I would have the size and frame size of the revolver I want.
Yeah.
Or because this is wish list, Smith & Wesson, make my damn revolver.
When it comes to revolvers, I'm a K-frame guy. Give me a 3-inch K-frame round butt. And I don't know why they ever made anything else.
So maybe on the K-frame, but like on the L and definitely on the ends. And I see it too, like they don't look right to me. with a 3-inch barrel because the frame and the cylinder are so big. And where you see it is like the Colt Pythons. When you see like a 3-inch Python and you just see this massive cylinder and grip and this little it just doesn't balance right. But when you put a 4-inch on it, then it all flows and balances right, you know?
Dude, you must have never shot a 3-inch 13 then.
Well, so no, I'm saying with the L
Yeah.
frame. So if the K is that mid-size, a little bit
Yeah.
smaller,
Yeah.
the smaller frames and the shorter
Yeah.
barrels, you know, they look right. But
Yeah.
it's if you take that like that end frame
Mhm.
and you try like there's a couple of custom shop out there, the
Yeah.
performance centers where they're running 629s with 3-inch barrels.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just yeah, it doesn't look right, you know, it just
Well, I have a research project for you.
okay.
You now have to go research Jovino conversions.
No, because I
Yes.
saw the same one on the forum you probably saw. And I think I asked you about it. I had I'm like, who is Jovino and what is he doing? And it turned out to be like some 2-inch, 1873 or something like that. Single action army.
I have a Jovino conversion 25.5 and 45 Colt.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah. And basically what he did was he took the longer barreled end frames and cut them down to like 2 3/4, 2.5, 2 3/4.
Yeah, he made that's why I think he made it super short.
And then he reshaped the grip frame so that it's the same size grip frame as the K and L frame instead of the bigger end frame.
I saw the one for sale on the forum and I kind of looked at the pictures. And I was like, you know, and I never heard of the guy, but once again, I am nowhere familiar with the revolver industry, but I did watch Ken Hackathorn and Bill Wilson talk about his favorite revolvers, and that was an entertaining video. But yeah, I wouldn't mind, you know, if that came out. But yeah, there you go. There's my wish list. That or my 458 SOCOM Marlin.
I think the only one of those that has a realistic possibility is you buying an L frame and having it change to 38 Super. I think that's the only one that's realistic in that.
Yeah, I can't say you're wrong on that.
And that's more realistic than me getting proper link stocks on rifles.
You know, that seems like an easy thing, right? You know, just short stock spacers. You're doing it with rifles, just do it with a shotgun.
Well, do it with rifles too, though. And it's just the thing is like,
oh my God, I didn't tell you.
Okay.
Okay, we have to, even if you have to make this video long.
Go ahead.
So I have a new project passion.
Okay. Because we're not doing like the last 3 projects.
Right. No, I'm starting to, some of my projects are starting to finish up, so I need new ones. I found that there's a company called Stevens that makes shotguns, right? Well, they make over-unders. And I saw on a video, because you know, late at night when it's 2 in the morning and you can't sleep and you're just scrolling through YouTube, and then you come across these really obscure videos of this guy who took a Stevens 555 over-under and he cut the barrels down to 18.5 inches. And then he cut the stock down to 12. Totally legal, right? Still overall length is like 33 inches. So it's not an SBR and SBS in any way. But because on a over under, there is no receiver. So the barrels run right to the back. They're right to the back over the trigger guard. So even though they're still 18.5 inch barrels, this gun is like this. It is the tiniest little thing. It's like a true like stagecoach, you know, riding shotgun thing. And I'm like, I must have one of those.
Stoger produced them.
Well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'll have to check on Stoger specifically is I want the auto ejectors.
Okay.
So on the Stevens, when you open it, it kicks them out automatically, you know, too. So I'm like, oh, yes, I need to do this. And then I'll take the top, send it off to Briley, have them cut it and re-choke it for the adjustable chokes, cut the stock down to 12 inches, like you said, the proper length for a shotgun. This thing is going to be like this long. It's going to be an over-under, and it's going to be a perfect snake gun. Some number 8s in that thing and just walk out and be like, yes. You know what? I'll find it. I'll send you the link of this, of the guy that did it. And it's just like, why have I not done this before? Because you just don't realize how long shotgun receivers are, right? And the barrels and where they go. Well, when you do an over under, you have no receiver. The
Right.
base of the shotgun shell is over top of your trigger finger. So when you cut the barrels, that thing is super short.
Yeah, I may have done an interstate extradition of a prisoner uh, toting a side by side that had been altered in much the similar manner, and
Oh, see that?
stopping in rest stops all along the interstate for him to go to the bathroom, and him standing there using the bathroom with me with a double barrel shoved in his kidneys. And
See, there needs to be a picture of that. That needs to
there
be on
there is
that
a
needs to be on a website
there
somewhere.
are pictures of that.
Yes.
And
Yes, that
he
you know,
behaved himself, so I took him for a walk to see the Mississippi River.
you know, a picture suitable for framing would be perfect to go where those dishes are right now.
There's a picture of me walking down the sidewalk with him at the rest stop at the Vicksburg stop on I-20 when you come back over the Mississippi River.
Yep.
And we stopped there, and he was behaving himself, so I took him around to the observation platform where you can watch the river go by. And Sheriff Barry and I were doing that extradition, and we were talking about the Battle of Vicksburg.
Hmm.
And it and Gettysburg took place the same day. And Sheriff Barry mentioned that, and the inmate we were extraditing said, "Is Gettysburg around here?" And we're like, "No, it's not."
You're not going to be able to see that one.
Yeah, we're not going to the Gettysburg battlefield.
Uh, man. Well, yeah, more good stuff. So I'll send you the link for that video. It's just wildly entertaining.
All right, well, folks, if you have managed to stay this long with us, this is what it's
Oh,
like ahead. I should get started.
yes,
And,
this is what it's like on the telephone,
yeah,
or like when we talk, or
or
this is
3 hours after a class is ended, we're still sitting at
yes,
the picnic table at the range.
yeah,
So
yeah. So you get the nonsensical ramblings of us. So
there you go. Well, folks, your most important asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.